This time we're going to be talking about graph settings and information display settings. As always, check the video title, the video description, and customtype1.com, the blog section for any updates about this video or loop follow in general. Specifically, if this video has updates, I will put them in the description because YouTube does not allow you to update videos. So graph settings, I'm going to have it open on the iPhone and point out what it does on the iPad screen on the left. So dots and lines are the BG dots or the BG lines between them. You can display one or the other or both. Carb bolus values and carb absorption control. Carbs are orange, bolus is blue. It controls whether you want, and this keeps going off because it's updating, controls if you want, for instance, the 25 grams, 3 hours next to it, or 2.8 units of bolus next to it. DIA lines, and I will zoom out to show you these. You can see faintly the current timeline is a solid gray line, and then I have faint dashed lines, and also the carbs and boluses get more transparent over that time. That is the 6 hours of insulin decay, so that you can easily scan through and see how long ago a dose was, or a bullet, or a carbs were entered, things like that, to know, sort of a rough visual of what's going on with the insulin that's still active in the system. Display small treatments on graph. That tells it whether this lower graph should just be BG, or if the lower graph should also include the overrides, the carb dots, bolus dots, basal lines, stuff like that. Small graph height, that controls, if you prefer this small graph to be a little bigger, you can squeeze it up bigger if you want. Hours of prediction, this is again loops prediction. So if you don't use loop and or don't use Night Scout, you won't have this. But if you do use loop and Night Scout, you can set this anywhere from 0 prediction to 6 hours of prediction. Minimum BG scale and minimum basal scale are similar. BG scale controls the scale on the right, and you can see she had a high here yesterday of 287. So I have the scale set to 250. By default, it'll scale it with 250 as the top. But if there's something that exceeds that, even if it exceeds it just as a need to put in other points above it, such as these bolus dots above it, to have room for it, it will automatically scale it up. And then the same thing with basal scale. That's your scale on the left, and that shows your temp basals that are going on here. So if you prefer like Night Scout, where they're all underneath separated, you just set a higher scale for that. I kind of choose one in the middle so that I can see a little more detail of what's going on. Low and high BG display controls the red and the yellow lines, as well as that triggers your dots and BG lines to shift from green to red and yellow. And then show days back and midnight lines go together. And I'll actually, I'm going to restart the app. This normally would update with the next 5-minute reading. I'm going to restart the app just to get it updated immediately for you. So what you can see here is, on the iPad, it's just about 1 p.m. And if we scroll back, it goes back to the same time period 24 hours ago. On the iPhone now, we have, and I will find one of these midnight lines. So here you can see a dashed midnight line, 12 a.m. We can go back an entire extra day. There's 12 a.m. the day before. So you can have up to 4 days total and display lines at midnight if you want to. Now, it's important to tell you that the stats are the last 24 hours. They're irrespective of that number of days setting. They always use the last 24 hours. And the last thing I want to show you here is the information display settings. That controls these items on the top. If there's some that you never use, for instance, if you don't want to see the prediction, that's loops high and low prediction, you can turn it off. If there's others, you can see on the iPad, I have override all the way at the top. You can click and drag, you can turn them on and off based on what your needs are. That's everything for graph settings and information display settings. Check the other videos out for some of the other details you can do with loop follow.